At the turn of the 16th century, Frenchmen were not behind other nations in maritime enterprise. It is claimed that they visited Newfoundland, then supposed to be a part of the eastern coast of Asia, as early as 1504, and we have records of the Pensée of Dieppe, a ship, making the voyage to this far-off land in 1507, and soon after this date, of others from the same port, namely the Bonaventure, the Sibylle, the Michel, and the Marie de Bonne Nouvelle. In 1524, while Francis I was engaged in an exhausting struggle with the Emperor Charles V, Verrazzano made his famous voyage of discovery to the New World in the interest of the French king. 3 years later, no less than 11 Norman ships are known to have visited St. John's, Newfoundland, and cannot doubt that the unrecorded voyages to this region were much more unrecorded voyages of this region were much more numerous than those whose record have been preserved to us. The numerous voyages made to the New World by the French up to this time were all, with the exception of that of Verrazzano, private ventures, most of them depending for reimbursement upon fishing, walrus hunting, and trading for furs with the First Nations. The French king had been ever so warmly interested in voyages of discovery, was for a long time so deeply engaged in war that he could not have given attention to such enterprises. But an interval of peace following the Treaty of Cambrai, which was concluded in 1529, enabled him to listen to stories of Western adventure, which, since Verrazzano's notable voyage, had been obliged to disregard. Spain, however, had been pushing her discoveries in the New World, and fabulous stories were circulating throughout Europe of the wealth of her American possessions. From the frozen wastes of the Arctic Ocean to the desolate shores of Terra del Fuego, Spain claimed or expected eventually to control everything to be discovered in the Western Hemisphere. It is true that she recognized the line of demarcation fixed by the Pope between her prospective possession and those of Portugal, but when the fullness of time Portuguese nationality had been merged in her own, the whole Western world might be hers. She therefore regarded with distaste any attempt on the part of any European nations to trench upon her preserves. France realized this, and ambitious to share in advantages which might be derived from Western discovery, Francis I was in a mood to listen to projects of adventures in American waters. Just a little bit of an aside concerning the edict from the Pope. The bull of Pope Alexander VI, dated May 4, 1493, gave Spain all west and Portugal all east of a meridian 100 degrees west of Azores and Cape de Verde Islands, which were assumed to be in the same longitude. On June 7, 1494, by convention of Tordesillas, it was agreed to move the meridian line to a point 370 leagues west of Cape de Verde Island. It was now that Philippe Chabot, Sieur de Brion and High Admiral of France, introduced to his master Jacques Cartier, whom he knew as a skillful pilot in foreign waters. It would be interesting to have an account of Cartier's audience with the French king, but we may only imagine it. The Breton pilot, who perhaps had been one of Verrazzano's companions, unfolded to his regal listener the fascinating theory then held by cosmographers of a waterway to some of the rich port of India by the west, and painted the possibilities of success so brightly that he won his sanctions to conduct a search for it. Cartier believed that he should find by some one of the many openings in the coast in the vicinity of Newfoundland the long-expected route to the interior of India, the theory being entertained at this time that Newfoundland was but a projection of the eastern coast of Asia. In this, like so many who followed him, he was in error. Having enabled the king in his project, and being actively supported by the High Admiral as well as by the Vice Admiral, The Sieur de Meilleraye, who personally undertook to supervise the equipment of his ships, it might reasonably be supposed that Cartier's course would be unobstructed, but such was not the case. At the outset, he encountered hostility from those interested in maritime affairs. Some of his opponents were engaged in fishing and trading adventures in the new land, and did not care to invite competition by having a knowledge of it made public. And others felt that taking so many of the most skillful mariners from the regular service would create a dearth in the market. Therefore, not only were active efforts made to dissuade men from enlisting, but they were spirited away and kept beyond Cartier's reach. We therefore find him, on March 19, 1533, complaining before the alloué of these acts of obstruction and praying that the offenders should be enjoined from further interference with the contemplated voyage. Accordingly, orders were issued to arrest the ships of the offending parties and not to suffer their departure until Cartier's crews had been secured. This summary action had the desired effect. We'll move on to in the next video the actual journals from Cartier's first voyage of 3. And that is it.